Few cars in American history have been mocked as much as the Ford Pinto. It was cheap, bland, and later buried under one of the biggest scandals Detroit had ever seen. To most people, it was nothing more than a punchline, a reminder of what happens when a car company cuts too many corners. But what if I told you that buried inside this little commuter box was a version so wild, so ahead of its time, that it could outrun a Porsche? A version almost nobody has heard of, built not by Ford's executives, but by a dealer who refused to accept the Pinto's fate. This forgotten machine didn't just get a facelift, it was reborn with exotic styling, cutting-edge suspension, and a turbocharged engine that doubled its power. It was called the Pinto Pangra, and it might just be the most shocking underdog story in automotive history. And the strangest part? Fewer than 50 were ever built. 1. The Pinto's infamous reputation. When Ford rolled out the Pinto in 1970, it wasn't trying to impress anyone. This was a car built for one reason: survival. Imports like the Volkswagen Beetle and the Datsun 1200 were flooding American streets, and Ford needed a cheap, no-frills subcompact to fight back. With a starting price of just $1,900, the Pinto ticked the boxes. It was small, light, and affordable. But that's where the praise ended. Critics slammed it for feeling cheap and underpowered. Car magazines dismissed it as uninspired transportation, nothing more than a box on wheels. And then came the firestorm, literally. By the mid-1970s, reports of Pintos catching fire in rear-end crashes turned the little car into one of the most infamous machines Detroit had ever built. Its name became shorthand for failure, and its reputation never recovered. Most dealers saw it as a car to sell quickly and forget. But in California, one man looked at the Pinto and saw something completely different. He saw a blank canvas, a lightweight platform with hidden potential, the kind of potential that could embarrass sports cars costing twice as much. 2. Jack Stratton's vision. Jack Stratton wasn't your typical car dealer. As the general sales manager at Huntington Ford in California, he could have played it safe, selling Pintos as they came from the factory. But Stratton had bigger ambitions. He was a performance guy at heart, and he saw the automotive world changing in ways that most people ignored. The golden age of muscle cars was fading. Rising insurance rates and stricter emissions laws were choking the life out of V8 powerhouses. But instead of clinging to the past, Stratton looked ahead. He knew the future wasn't in heavy gas-guzzling beasts, it was in smaller, lighter, more efficient cars. And sitting right on his lot was Ford's cheapest, most ridiculed compact, the Pinto. On paper, it seemed laughable. A bare-bones economy car with less than 100 horsepower. Nobody would dare compare it to a Porsche 914 or a Datsun 240Z. But Stratton wasn't thinking about what the Pinto was, he was imagining what it could become. Its biggest weakness, its tiny size and low weight, could actually be its secret weapon. Stratton's vision was bold. Take this underdog and transform it into something exotic, a car that could not only compete with imports but even beat them at their own game. He called his creation the Pinto Pangra. But before the Pinto could earn any respect, it needed a complete makeover. Starting with the one thing everyone noticed first: its looks. 3. The radical makeover. Let's be honest, no matter how much power you stuffed under the hood, nobody was going to take the Pinto seriously if it still looked like a cheap commuter car. Stratton knew that if he wanted people to believe in his vision, the first thing that had to change was the body. He turned to fiberglass specialist Bob Crow, who completely reimagined the Pinto's face. Out went the flat, forgettable front end. In its place came a sleek shark-nose design, long and aggressive, almost Corvette-like in profile. The transformation didn't stop there. The Pangra's body kit stretched the car by nearly 10 inches, added streamlined fenders, and even introduced manual pop-up headlights that gave it a European flair. From the side, the car looked lower, sharper, more exotic. From the front, it was unrecognizable as a Pinto. The redesign gave it presence, the kind of presence that made people stop and stare, wondering what exactly they were looking at. And suddenly, this wasn't a throwaway economy car anymore. With its new lines and bold attitude, the Pinto Pangra looked ready to challenge imports head-on. But Stratton knew that good looks weren't enough. If the car was going to live up to its appearance, it had to drive like a true sports machine. That's when he set his sights on the suspension. 4. Suspension and handling upgrades. Looks alone weren't going to win over skeptics. If the Pangra was going to take on cars like the 240Z or Porsche 914, it needed to handle just as well as it looked. The stock Pinto suspension? Not even close. It was built for economy, not excitement. Stratton brought in Coney, one of the best names in performance suspension, to develop a package that would completely change the way the Pinto drove. The upgrades included custom shocks, a 2-inch drop in ride height, stiffer sway bars, and 7-inch wide magnesium wheels. On paper, it sounded impressive. On the road, it was something else entirely. The numbers told the story. A factory Pinto struggled in corners, but the Pangra could pull an astonishing 0.874 GS on the skid pad before losing grip. To put that in perspective, the Datsun 240Z and Porsche 914, both respected sports cars, managed only around 0.73. Suddenly, the little Pinto wasn't just keeping up, it was outperforming the imports. For the first time, drivers could look at this once-dismissed car and realize it had the bones of a real sports machine. But there was still one glaring problem. Under the hood, the Pinto's tiny 4-cylinder engine was barely making 90 horsepower. If Stratton wanted his creation to truly compete, it needed more than handling. It needed power, and he had a radical plan to get it. 5. Turbocharging the Pinto. The Pinto's lightweight frame and new suspension gave it serious handling chops, but there was no escaping its biggest weakness, the engine. From the factory, the little 2.0-liter 4-cylinder barely scraped together 90 horsepower. That might have been fine for grocery runs, but in a car built to challenge sports cars, it was laughable. Most tuners at the time would have gone with the obvious solution, drop in a V8. But Stratton refused. A heavy V8 would ruin the balance and cornering that made the Pangra so special. Instead, he looked to the future. He turned to A.K. Miller, one of the pioneers of turbocharging in America. Together, they engineered a system that transformed the Pinto's humble engine into a fire breather. An AI-researched turbocharger, paired with a 2-barrel carburetor, nearly doubled the output to 175 horsepower. To keep things reliable, the compression ratio was dropped, a water injection system was added to control cylinder temps, and boost was kept at a manageable 10 psi. The results were shocking. The Pangra could sprint from 0 to 60 in just 7.5 seconds and run the quarter mile in the low 15s, quicker than both the Datsun 240Z and the Porsche 914. Even more impressive, it remained EPA compliant, something other turbo experiments of the era, like the Yenko Turbo Vega, often struggled with. For the first time, the words Pinto and performance could be spoken in the same sentence. Stratton's underdog had gone from economy car to legitimate sports car killer. But while the engineering was impressive, getting one into your driveway was a story all its own. 6. Buying a Pangra. Owning a Pinto Pangra in the early 70s wasn't like walking into a dealership and picking a Mustang off the lot. Stratton designed the buying process to be as unique as the car itself. Customers had two options, and both came with a twist. The first was simple: buy a fully assembled Pangra straight from Huntington Ford. For around $5,000, you got the complete package: fiberglass body kit, suspension upgrades, turbo system, Recaro seats, and even a custom dashboard you couldn't get anywhere else. It looked exotic, drove like a sports car, and turned heads instantly. But Stratton also knew there were plenty of do-it-yourself gearheads who wanted to build their dream car at home. So he sold the Pangra in kits. A Level 1, a $600 fiberglass front fascia that gave any Pinto the shark nose look. A Level 2, a suspension package with lowering springs, Coney shocks, and sway bars for just under $1,000. A Level 3, the crown jewel, a complete turbo powertrain kit with water injection and exhaust hardware for $1,691. The catch? No matter how many kits you bought, you could never fully replicate the dealer-built version. The custom dashboard remained exclusive to cars that came straight out of Huntington Ford. That little detail gave the factory Pangra a unique identity collectors still chase today. The kits could be fitted to both hatchback and wagon Pintos, which meant you could technically build a turbocharged Pinto wagon with Porsche-beating performance. Just imagine rolling up in that. But while the idea was innovative, the numbers tell a different story, and they explain why the Pangra has become one of the rarest forgotten cars of the 70s. 7. Rare production and decline. On paper, the Pinto Pangra had everything going for it: exotic looks, turbocharged power, sharp handling, and even the flexibility of a kit car. But in reality, very few ever made it onto the road. Between 1973 and 1974, it's believed that fewer than 50 fully assembled Pangra rolled out of Huntington Ford. Add in the customer-built kits, and the total might stretch to a couple hundred cars at most. That makes the Pangra rarer than many Italian exotics of its era. So why did it fail? Timing. The 1973 oil crisis made gas prices skyrocket and sports cars look like bad investments. At the same time, Ford was battling the Pinto's growing reputation as a fire hazard, thanks to its controversial gas tank design. Even though the Pangra was mechanically different, it couldn't escape the Pinto's stigma. There was also the issue of cost. At $5,000, the Pangra was competing directly with cars like the Datsun 240Z, which had global marketing, a proven racing record, and the full weight of Nissan behind it. For most buyers, the choice was obvious, and the Pangra remained a hidden gem. By 1974, Stratton's dream project quietly faded away. Huntington Ford stopped producing them, the kits dried up, and the Pinto Pangra slipped into obscurity. But that's not where the story ends, because decades later, collectors would rediscover this forgotten turbocharged oddball and give it a new cult following. 8. Cult status and legacy. For decades, the Pinto Pangra was little more than a strange footnote in automotive history. Most people never even knew it existed, and those who did often dismissed it as just a weird Pinto with a body kit. But as time passed, something changed. Car collectors began to realize just how rare and unusual the Pangra really was. With fewer than 50 factory-built cars and only a handful of surviving kits, tracking one down became almost impossible. And when they did show up at auctions or car shows, they drew crowds instantly. Today, a genuine Pangra is considered a holy grail among oddball enthusiasts. Prices have soared, with pristine examples fetching tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more than triple the cost of a regular Pinto. Owners love telling the story that this was the turbocharged Pinto Ford never really wanted, born out of one dealer's obsession with speed. Beyond the price tag, the Pangra has become a cult icon because it represents something rare in the car world, a what-if machine. What if Ford had fully backed it? What if the oil crisis never happened? Could the Pinto Pangra have become a Mustang-level legend instead of a forgotten experiment? We'll never know for sure. But what we do know is this. Every time a Pangra shows up, it reminds us that even in the most unexpected corners of automotive history, there are hidden treasures waiting to be uncovered. And that's why the Pinto Pangra isn't just a forgotten car, it's a forgotten revolution. The Pinto Pangra proves that sometimes, the boldest ideas don't come from corporate boardrooms or billion-dollar budgets, they come from visionaries who refuse to settle for ordinary. What started as a humble Pinto, mocked for its flaws, was transformed into a sleek, turbocharged beast that rivaled European legends. But fate had other plans. The oil crisis, the Pinto's tarnished name, and the lack of Ford's support buried the Pangra before it had a chance to shine. And maybe that's why it fascinates us even more today, because it's a reminder of what could have been. So the next time someone laughs at the Pinto, you'll know the secret. That hidden inside Ford's most ridiculed car was one of the rarest, wildest, and most ambitious American sports cars ever built. This was the story of the Pinto Pangra, the forgotten turbocharged Pinto that almost rewrote history. You've been watching Gear Ghosts, where lost legends of the road come back to life. If you enjoyed this journey into the forgotten, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us as we continue uncovering the machines that history tried to erase. Because every ghost has a story, and we're here to tell it.